there, this is Miss Teresa again, and today we're going to talk about punctuation. So let me go ahead and go to the screen share, and we're going to bring up the screen. Okay, here you go. Let me go ahead and expand that, and we're ready. Come on, you can do this. There we go. All right, so punctuation. Everyone knows, well, I'm sure if you don't know, you've seen, whoops, hello, the comic here where it says grandma, sometimes it says grandpa, but it's let's eat grandma. Well, when you first read that, it's kind of funny because when you look at it, you're like, okay, that's telling me we're going to eat my grandmother. And she's like, what? But the reason why this is so funny is because it proves a point that punctuation is very important. So with this statement, when you leave the comma out, then it does sound like you're talking about eating your grandmother. But when you put the comma in where it's supposed to be, it's let's eat grandma, which is a whole lot better. So like it says on the right side there, why do we need punctuation? Well, punctuation allows the author's writing to be easy to read and understandable for the reader. And we don't have these little mistakes. Okay, so these are various types of punctuation that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the period, the comma, the colon, the question mark, quotation marks, the exclamation point, parentheses, and the apostrophe. So the rule for the period is that you use it at the end of a complete sentence. For example, I went to the store for groceries, period. Another rule is that you can use it at the end of an indirect question. The example that's given here is, he asked where the milk was. So instead of using it as a direct question and using the ending punctuation question mark, you're using it as a indirect question with just as a statement and using a period to end it. Commas, they're very, very important, as we just saw in the previous slide. For the rules, the rules for those are use a comma to separate words or items in a list. For example, she has 2 dogs, 3 cats, 1 bird, and 5 fish in her house. She's got a lot of animals. Another rule is using a comma to separate a city from its state. For example, I am from East Lansing, Michigan. A third rule, use a comma to separate the day of the month from the year. For example, he was born on August 4th, 1990. And the last rule for a comma is use a comma to separate 2 adjectives, which we know are describing or modifying words, when the word and, which is a fanboy's conjunction, you guys know this because we've been over this, can be inserted between them. For example, she was a young, comma, beautiful dog. So if we didn't have the comma there, we would have the conjunction and. It would read, she was a young and beautiful dog. But because we don't have the conjunction there, we're using a comma in place of it. Parentheses. The rule for parentheses are use parentheses to enclose words or figures that clarify or are used as an aside. For example, he received 150 points, open parenthesis, 150, close parenthesis, on his math project. So it's kind of like clarifying something that you're saying and you want it to be included in the statement. So again, here, they're taking the numerical 150 and putting it in parentheses in relation to the written 150. That way you have clarification. We've talked about questions before. Remember interrogative statements? Those are question marks, or questions, sorry. The rule for question marks is that you use a question mark only after a direct question, not like an indirect question like we talked about a while ago. So for example, will you come over after school? Question mark. And usually when you're saying that verbally, you can hear your voice go up a little bit so you know it's a question. And remember, if you're given a question about an interrogative statement, they're talking about a question. Anything that has the term interrogative means it's a question. Even if it's something in math, it means it's a question. Okay. Apostrophes. So with apostrophes, we have two rules. We use them to show possession. For example, John's Latin book was left in his locker. Remember we talked about John's Latin book in one of our sentence presentations or sentence videos. And so John's Latin book was left in his locker. So the Latin book belongs to John. Therefore, we add an apostrophe plus the S attached to the name John, which is a singular noun. If it was a plural noun, we would not add the S to it. Okay, so then the second rule for the apostrophe is to show omission of letters, like in a contraction. For example, John couldn't convince Crystal to bring his book home with her. So couldn't is a contraction for could not. Using the apostrophe to show the omission of the letter O in the word not is the correct way to combine these two words. And no, it's not so much of a compound word because we're using it as a contraction. Okay, so that's how we use apostrophes, showing possession and in contractions. Then we have the colon. Now there are two rules for the colon. We use the colon after a complete sentence to introduce a list of items. For example, on my trip, I will bring clothes, a pillow, a sleeping bag, a toothbrush, and my teddy bear. And notice in that list that we're also using our commas to separate those items. Another rule is using the colon after the greeting of the person's name in a business letter. For example, Dear Mr. Smith. Since this is a professional greeting, you do not use a comma as you would in a personal letter, but you're going to use the colon instead. And then we have the exclamation point. The rule is the exclamation point is used to show emphasis or excitement. Summer is in 3 months. That's the example for the exclamation point. And then we have double and single quotations. So the rule for double quotations is that you use it for titles of books, movies, etc. For example, one of my favorite movies is It. Another rule for using double quotations is to use them for direct quotes. For example, Teresa said, I am an avid fan of Edgar Allan Poe's work. You do not use double quotations for indirect quotes, such as Teresa said that she is an avid fan of Edgar Allan Poe's work. Then you use single quotation marks for when you are writing a quote within a quote. For example, when I say immediately, I mean sometime before August, said the manager. Okay, so there we're using the word immediately as a quote within the quote of what the manager said. So remember, correct punctuation is necessary in your writing. It gives your reader an understanding of the meaning of the text and the idea you are trying to present. Correct punctuation is also an important tool to make your writing or your written text logical and readable. And remember, even a small comma can greatly change the meaning of the sentence. Grandma knows. So you guys have a great day, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.